She was born into polygamy. Her family followed the teachings of Joseph Smith, including plural marriage. Like many young girls, she had been promised to a man who was her father's age. But she ran away. She chose hell over a life of polygamy. That girl was me. I was lost, alone, desolate. Then Jesus Christ found me and rescued me. In His love, I found real freedom. He is a shield to all who will take refuge in Him. This is why I can look back and ask, polygamy? What love is this? Welcome to our show, Polygamy, What Love Is This? I'm your host, Doris Hanson, and the purpose of our show is to encourage Mormon polygamists to search the scriptures to discover if what their leaders have been teaching them is true. And we also offer help to those who question polygamy and are in a polygamy group and would like to escape. We will answer your questions, and we will also help you get out if you would like. If you or anyone you know is in a polygamy group and would like to have some questions answered, give us a call. We have a toll-free number. It's 877-425-9993. And we can also help you escape safely and give you a safe place to go after you leave as well. And if there's anyone who wants to make comments or have questions about any show that we've done or any topic that we do or you'd like us to do, you can send us an email or call us. Our email is email@whatloveisthis.tv, and our telephone number you can call for the show is 385-240-2888, and we'd love to hear your comments about any of our programs. Our guest this time is a former member of both polygamy and also the LDS Church. He is here to share his story of his experience and his journey to find the truth. So I would like to introduce and welcome our guest today, Alan Nielsen.
Thank you, Doris. It's good to be here.
Thanks for coming, and your story is awesome. We talked a few weeks ago, and I thank you for agreeing to come. It's rare that we get a male who is from a polygamy group to come and talk about their story. And so I want to thank you for agreeing to do that. So let's just get on to your story of being raised. What polygamy group were you raised in? And are you generational polygamy, or did your parents convert, or what happened?
On my dad's side, my dad converted from the LDS Church into fundamentalism. So he wasn't born into it, but my mom was born into it. So she's like a generation or two into fundamentalism, but my dad wasn't.
And so was your mom born in a group setting?
Yeah, it was the group in those days. It was really just one group. You know, I mean, they hadn't had so many divisions like they do right now, and so they kind of, nowadays we recognize them with different group names and stuff like that. That they were just all one people, you know, and that's where my mom came from. By the time my dad came in, it was right at the beginning of breakoffs when the breakups started happening.
To form the different polygamy groups by name.
And the Allreds, the AUB, they were still one group when my dad came in, and it was shortly after that. In fact, they were right in the middle of the transitioning, the break-off, when my dad got interested in fundamentalism and stuff like that.
And so what group did he end up being part of?
Well, it's called the FLDS now.
Right.
But that was a terminology that I wasn't familiar with, and because it's actually a more modern terminology, FLDS. I think they took the name and incorporated it in I think it was like the 1990s, or maybe it was the 80s.
Late 80s, I think.
It could have been,
or something like that.
But when I was growing up, I never heard the term FLDS.
Right, and it was called Short Creek. We always referred to it as Short Creek.
Yeah, Short Creek, I always talked about it was the group. It was just the work. Sometimes we said it was the work.
That's the same thing we refer to in the Kingston group, the work or the group. Exactly right. So your parents, your mother mother was born in it, so she had that mindset, but your father joined. And so they were part of the FLDS, or the Short Creek group, as you were born and being raised. Did your father have polygamous wives? Was he a polygamist?
Yeah, no, he wasn't a polygamist until he joined this group, and then shortly after he joined the group, he was involved in polygamy within a year or two, and then he had my mom and her sister.
Her sister.
Yeah, were his first wives, and so they were married to him within 2 years. You know, so it was right off the bat. You know, he had married the first wife, who wasn't my mom, and then 2 years later he married my mom.
Oh, so your mother was the second wife.
She was the second wife.
Second wife.
She was actually supposed to be the first wife, but she, her dad asked her. Her name was Colleen. He said, "Colleen, would you like to get married?" And there was a particular gentleman that she thought was asking for her, and she did not want to marry him.
Oh.
She was scared of him. He frightened her, and she didn't want to marry him. And also, she said, "No, I don't want to be married." And so, her father, well, it wasn't her real father, because her real father had died, but it was her uncle who married her mother, came to her younger sister and said, "Do you want to get married?" She said, "Sure." And she was, I believe, like 15 or 16.
Oh my goodness.
I could be wrong on that, but it's somewhere right around that age. Yeah. So she was pretty young, and she was younger than my mom, and she said, "Yeah, I'll get married." And so she marries my dad. And when my mom found out it was my dad, I think she was like, "Oh,
oh darn."
I would have done that, you know. And so shortly after, 2 years later, from what I've been told, then she marries my dad.
Okay. So would you call them, as it would go in a polygamy group, a happy polygamous situation?
My earliest recollections was in different homes. So I didn't really even recognize, because my dad put my mom into another home, and the first wife was in a separate home from her. And so I grew up in it was like a triplex downtown on like 4th South.
So you were raised in Salt Lake?
Yeah, it was in Salt Lake City. On 4th South, we had a triplex, and there were some other polygamous families that lived on one side, and another family lived upstairs, and then we lived in the other side. And so I grew up, my first probably 7 years, that's all I knew, was just that family, and my dad would come over occasionally, and I don't even remember much thought about having any other siblings anywhere else. I didn't put it all together until later.
How many total siblings do you have from your family?
Totally, I could be wrong on this, but I think it's right around 45.
45 siblings?
Yeah. I mean, the number could be off by a digit or two, but I think it's...
That's a lot for 2 wives.
Well, he had more than 2 wives, but I mean, this... Okay. I'm talking overall.
How many wives did he have?
He had, I believe, 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that doesn't sound so... Well, now, would you say that your childhood was okay? Was it a safe,
The early years,
home?
When I lived on what I always call 4th South, I had a good time. It was, you know, it seemed pretty normal to me. I didn't really have a lot of trouble that I could think about. I know that I was raised with a certain amount of fear. You know, there was just fear of the outside world. That was very, very prominent.
They
like,
put that in all of us,
everybody's going to get you. You better, you know, don't say nothing to nobody. Don't talk to nobody. And I don't know why, but that was a pretty strong thing to. I was raised with, and I remember that even as a young person up on 4th South, I remember being afraid of the world and the people out there, and don't talk to anybody.
So did you go to public school? Did the FLDS have their school at that time? Their own school?
At 4th South, I wasn't old enough yet. I remember watching my older sisters go catch the bus or walk to school. I can't remember what it was, but I remember them going to school, and I remember looking forward to the day when I got to go. And before I reached the age of going to 1st grade, my dad moved us into the one home.
Okay.
And that was when I, you know, had the experience of actually living in a polygamous home with other, you know, another wife and the other families. And we used to visit them. I remember we would go visit. They lived on 5th East, so it was 3 or 4 miles away, and we would go visit the other family. And I don't remember, I honestly don't remember if I thought they were my siblings or if they were like cousins. I just can't remember what I thought at the time.
Yeah, we were taught that the other family, until we could old enough to keep a secret, that the other family were our cousins and she was our aunt. That's the way we...
And I know I called her name was Carol, and I called her Aunt Carol at that time. And so it sticks in my mind that I kind of thought that they were my cousins. Yeah. But then I'm not totally clear. I may have been told, and I'm just not remembering.
So where did you go to school at any time?
I did. Once we moved into the big home, then because now there's two families in it, and the home there, my dad sent the children of the first wife to one public school, was Roosevelt Elementary, and it was to the south. And then he sent the others from the other wife, which was my mom, to Woodrow Wilson, which was to the north. And so half of the brothers would walk and sisters would walk to school this direction, and the other half would walk that way.
And that was to keep the identities more
Yes, because I went by a fictitious last name as well.
Yeah.
So as soon as I started school, we were told I took upon the name Collins. And it was probably... I was probably Collins before when I lived on 4th South, but I was too young to even know really much what my last name was.
So was that just while you went to school, or because now you go by the name Nielsen?
Yes. Yeah. While I went to school, we were told that you're going to be Alan Collins, and so that's what I would write on my papers at school, is Alan Collins, and I remember knowing that I wasn't really Collins. I knew that I was really Nielsen, but to the world, I was Alan Collins.
And they didn't have all the ID problems like they do now, to where you have to prove who you are.
No, and once again, it was that secrecy. It's just like, I'm Alan Collins, but yeah, I know I'm Alan Nielsen. So it's just kind of
that
funny
kind of
thing.
strange for the children like that.
It was.
So did you enjoy school, and did you graduate?
No, I didn't enjoy school. In fact, that's what made it very difficult, because there was this element of secrecy, and so we couldn't have friends. I could make friends at the schoolyard and stuff like that, but I couldn't bring them home. I couldn't. In fact, we were kind of sat down and told, don't tell anything about your home life. Just kind of like school them on what we need to say as we went to school.
Yeah.
And each year when we started school, we would have a little sit down and a reminder that we don't talk about our home life. We don't say that your father has 2 wives, because he could be put in prison, and and all this kind of stuff, because it wasn't too many years prior to that they had the raid on Short Creek, when the families were separated, and men were put in prison and stuff like that, and there was that fear put in me. I remember thinking, oh boy, I don't want to get my dad to go to prison,
right? And it would be our
quiet.
fault. It would be our fault if that happened. That blame would go on us because we yapped. So, who was the leader of the group at the time? Do you know?
Yeah, it was Leroy Johnson. Was who I looked upon and thought was like the prophet, I guess you would say. He was the leader of the group of men.
Did he live in Salt Lake, or did he live in Short Creek?
He had a home in Short Creek, and he had a home in Salt Lake.
Yeah. And so, did you go to church? Did you go to the church meetings?
I didn't go to church because church was really for when you got to be a little bit older. And so, if I remember right, my dad was saying, well, not until you can sit still and listen, and then you can go to church. And I think it was right around 11 or 12 years old when they would take you to church. Prior to that, we didn't have church. We would have family Sunday school or something like that, and that's about all we would have.
That's interesting. So were you ever familiar with the Alta Academy that the school the FLDS had?
Yeah, Alta Academy, I went to public school from 1st grade through 4th grade. And I remember registering for 5th grade, and then my dad gathered us all together and told us, you're not going to be going to public schools anymore. We've been invited to go to what he called a priesthood school. And so this was kind of like, and we were coached about how we needed to be exemplary students, and we're guests here, and this is one of the prophets of their leaders that it was his home, and we need to be on our best behavior. And so I was going to start going to that school.
So it was a real privilege to be invited to go.
Yeah,
to
yeah. That's how we thought of it, as a real privilege. You know.
So was Warren Jeffs part of the school at that time?
Yeah, Warren Jeffs was. He was a teacher. He wasn't of anybody in significance at the time. He was a teacher in. He taught what they called priesthood history, and then he taught math. He was actually a good math teacher. He was pretty smart. Huh. Good math teacher. Priesthood history was just kind of an indoctrination type of thing, you know, of their ideas and stuff like that.
Sure,
they call it priesthood history, but it was indoctrination.
So at that time, he didn't have any control like he later on did.
No, he was always he always came across as really pious and would never laugh or well, I shouldn't say never, but he was one to just kind of have that I'm righteous look, you know, and us when I got older, I went there till 8th grade, you know, and so I would always kind of like goad him on, you know, and say, you know, I could beat you up, you know, and then let me have an arm wrestle right now. I'd say I can do it because I thought I could, you know, I thought he's just a wimp, you know, he's just this tall wispy guy, and I thought I could beat him. And
but
he
never
took the challenge, and he would just kind of look at me with a, you know, kind of like that's beneath me type of thing, you know. But
no, as you were growing up, were you indoctrinated into polygamy? Did you expect to live polygamy when you grew up to get married?
Absolutely.
Did you look? What did you think about it? What did you think about to have multiple
wives?
Well,
you know, as a young person, you don't really give it a whole lot of thought, other than that's what you know, that's what you grow up with, and I just knew I was going to have a lot of wives, you know, and that's what you do, you know. And when you get a little bit older and you start having interest in the opposite sex, then things started to change for me a little bit. And me and my brothers, it's kind of comical because we actually had what we call a sweat list, and these are girls that would be on the sweat list because we didn't want to be married to them, you know. And in the group that I came from, you didn't really get to choose who you married. You had to submit yourself to the brethren. Or you tell your father, I'm ready to get married, and then he would take you to see one of the leaders and say, I want to turn myself in I want to get married now. And then they would say, okay, we'll start praying about it, and he would ask, you know, my dad to start praying about it, and then my dad would say, you need to be praying about it too, and then we'll see what they come up with, and so we were always terrified that one of these girls might be one of those. And so we would put them. We would joke around and say, "Oh, she's on my sweat list," you know, because we didn't want that to be paired up with that person.
Right.
And as a young person, it was somewhat comical. Even though I was like 14 or 15, it was somewhat comical. It ceased to be comical when I got older. You know, when I was getting to be 17 and really wanting to choose, it wasn't funny anymore.
Right.
And I was like,
were you scared at that point?
I said, no one's going to choose for me who I marry, and that's what I said to myself. But at the same time, it's like going against your religion. You're actually going against God.
Is, you bet. That's
in a way, and I kind of thought, well, I'm kind of rebelling against God to go and think these thoughts. But in my mind, I thought, I'm going to choose who I marry, and I just thought that.
So did you choose who you married?
Oh, I did. But by that time, I had rebelled against the religion, and so when I believe I was about 17 years old, I got involved with a bunch of guys that were from the Fundamentalist group, and some might have been from some other groups, but we'd play ball, like softball and stuff like that on a Monday night. And I remember coming home after work, and I had purchased what they call a baseball shirt, which is just, you know, arms come down to here, sleeves are different color, and it was like a T-shirt. It was just like a baseball shirt, you know, and I'd come home after playing ball with them, and my dad sees me in this baseball shirt, and he was very displeased, because this was
worldly.
Yeah, this was worldly, and this wasn't modest, and he gave me a lecture upon modesty, and it was just, I did not understand it. I thought it was foolish, and I was a little bit of a smart aleck about it, because he was telling me how that what I had done was worse than smoking, and I didn't understand that, because he tried to relate it to the fact that that smoking was like a word of wisdom thing which came by way of instruction, and modesty is what the brethren have preached that God had told them we should cover our bodies, and so I had broken that one, which is worse than the word of wisdom. And so I just kind of smart aleckly said, so I could come home tomorrow with a regular shirt on with a pack of cigarettes rolled up in there. Would that make you happy? You know, and he was not very happy at all about that. But that was how ridiculous it seemed to me at the time. And our relationship got really, really strained through those years. And many a times in different conflicts would come up with him, and I would say, well, you know, I'll leave home, and he'd say, well, I can call the authorities and they'll bring you right back to me. Yeah. You know, and so, and I knew that inside that he probably could. And so I would kind of just hunker down and say, well, when I'm 18, I can leave.
Boy, that sounds like my mindset exactly with me. So when you found the woman that you married, when you met, was she part of the FLDS group? Yeah,
she was part of that same group, but her dad had been he was kind of what they call a independent. So he had been part of the group, but he had separated himself out and was kind of considered not a faithful person, and so they were kind of more of an independent. And their family they didn't dress like ours, you know, the girls didn't wear the kind of the prairie dress type look, and they looked more normal. They would blend in a lot more to the average person that you would run into.
Right.
And they also celebrated Christmas and Halloween and different things and birthdays and stuff like that. We didn't do that.
Even way back then, the FLDS
we did not do Christmas.
So
I
that
didn't grow up with
start with
Christmas.
Warren Jeffs. It started back before.
It started while I was young. It was going. It might have been different earlier, but while I was young, we did not have Christmas. We did not do Halloween, and that was difficult. Going to school and having all your kids say, "What'd you get for Christmas?" and you didn't know what to say.
And from the Kingston group, we were able to celebrate those holidays, but it would be family to family whether they'd do Halloween and different things. But
we didn't. It was wrong for us to do Christmas and wrong for us to do Halloween. And
did you celebrate Joseph Smith's birthday?
I don't remember doing that. I just remember the only holiday I really remember was Thanksgiving. We did celebrate Thanksgiving for some reason, but we didn't do the others. But anyway, her family did, and they seemed like normal people, and so I kind of I thought, well, this is better, you know. But at one point in time, I had told my dad because I was so tired of all this kind of nonsense. And I just told him in a little bit of anger, I says, you know, if this is what heaven's like, I'm going to give hell a shot.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I said to him. And he wasn't very pleased with that at all. I could see that kind of hurt him. You know, before he was usually angry, but that really hurt him because I think he saw that I had reached a state when I wasn't, I think he saw he was losing me.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that bothered him, or you know, with polygamy groups, losing a young male is not as catastrophic as losing young females? So was he willing to let you go? Because
absolutely, he was very willing to let me go because, at least from my perspective, it appeared to me that image was more important than children. The image that he had, that his family was intact and things were going well, was better than coming after his children and maybe looking poorly among the leaders that he didn't like that idea. That was the message that I got.
So you met your wife to be, and when you married her, did you plan on living polygamy at the time?
Yeah.
Did she plan on it?
I did. I mean, kind of in the back of my mind, I kind of did. I left home when I was 18, and when I left at 18. I was done with religion for a little while. I mean, I was kind of like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
This whole religion, God stuff, I don't even know about it. And I had some other friends, and we would drink and just kind of party and just kind of live that life. And after a while of doing that for a year or two, it just lost its interest to me. I just wasn't as interested in that. So I started to think again a little bit about kind of religious things. And that's when I had met my wife, you know, and I kind of gravitated to her family because they were more normal. They had Christmas, and they invited me over to their house for Christmas, and I celebrated Christmas with them before I was married, and it seemed like, you know, they still believed in some of the same stuff and polygamy and that kind of life, but they were more normal, and their story was easier for me to believe in. I could have a little more freedom and autonomy, and so I kind of started going that direction and feeling like that was a better way.
Were her parents polygamous?
Yes. Yeah, her parents were polygamist. Her dad only had 2 wives, her mom and another one. And so she was familiar with that.
So what did you and she think about, especially her, your wife, about you taking plural wives?
She did not like it. It was a very difficult thing for her, but she thought, you know, this is what you have to do. But we got married kind of both under the idea that it could be, but in her mind she kind of just, it was one of those things she just put out of her mind, hoping that it just would never happen. Somehow it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
But she knew that there was a possibility.
Was there anything in your own mind that maybe looked forward to something like that? From a male viewpoint, a lot of people think, well, it's just sex, you know, but it's not always the case.
No, it's not. And I like the idea of just simply having people that loved you and more. You know, more was better than less is kind of what I thought. You know, I saw my dad, and he had, most of the time while I was growing up, he had 3 wives, and it's just like all 3 of these ladies care about him, look after him. Well, that's a pretty attractive thing for a man, you know. I mean,
yeah. And were you told that it was required for eternal life or something?
Absolutely, yeah.
Were you told that 3 wives was the minimum in order to?
I don't remember that particular thing, the 3 wives. It might have been. I might not have paid attention to it, but I did believe in polygamy that was required. But from where my perspective is it was also the particular group that I was in.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't just be polygamous somewhere else. You couldn't be an independent polygamist.
Right.
You needed to be part of this group.
That's right.
Acknowledge this authority.
We're out of time now, Alan. Thanks for joining us. But he is going to be here next time because we've got more of his story to tell. And so we'll see you next time, Alan. We do appreciate hearing the first part of Alan's story, and we do look forward to hearing the rest of his story. And we hope that those who believe in and practice polygamy will listen to our guests and do some research for themselves to discover what place polygamy really has in God's plan. God's kingdom is not any polygamy group. It isn't even the Mormon church. His kingdom consists of true disciples of Jesus Christ around the world and through the ages of time. Jesus said, anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter it. Receiving God's kingdom like a child cannot include polygamy or celestial marriage in order to be accepted into God's heaven. And Jesus said his kingdom is not of this world anyway. No works is required because Jesus is all we need, because Jesus is enough. See you next time on Polygamy. What love is this?